covering, wearing a belt to separate between, when you say bracha, between a belt, or we said anything that sticks to your body that will separate between your heart and your nakedness. So that's what we spoke about yesterday. Now we're on Samach on the base. The last thing we spoke about was the Gemara spoke about when you're putting on your tzitzit. Good morning. When you're putting on your tzitzit, when you're putting on your talit, the Gemara spoke about the talit, the bracha of l'satif b'tzitzit. Now, obviously, and now it says when you wrap yourself in your talit, general rule is, see, talit is a mitzvah, and there before you do a mitzvah, you say the bracha. You don't wrap yourself, in the talit and then say the blessing. Say the blessing before you wrap yourself in talit. Correct, everybody? Similar, but it's tefillin. I see sometimes people make a mistake. I see they tied the knot, and then they say the bracha. Mistake. First you say the bracha, and then you tie the knot. when you tie it, at what point does the person say the bracha on the laniach? So I've seen people that they just tied it, they just tighten it, and then they say the bracha. That's a mistake. You put it into place, but before you tighten it, because the mitzvah is the tightening of the tefillin, of tying the tefillin. The Torah says, morning, Jaime, morning, Aaron. The mitzvah of tefillin is to tie the tefillin to yourself, right, Nathan? Such a mitzvah to tie the tefillin. At which point, once you tied it, you already performed the mitzvah. And the general rule is, whenever you can, you say the bracha. First, general is you say a bracha in general before you perform the mitzvah. To place the tefillin. To place the tefillin on your. But it's interesting. Laniach tefillin is to place it on your hand, but you need to tie it to your hand. It's not just enough if I place the tefillin on my hand and I don't tie it, I don't tighten it, I did not fulfill the mitzvah. But the bracha is lahaniach tefillin. I'm placing the tefillin on my. It should be a drop loose, and then after it's a drop loose, then you say the bracha. So that it doesn't have to be too loose, but it should be loose enough that it's not really affixed to your hand. We're just explaining everybody that the general rule is you say a bracha before you perform a mitzvah. When you affix the mezuzah to a doorpost, you say the bracha, and then you put the mezuzah in. When you dip a utensil in the mikveh, first you say the bracha, and then you dip it into the mikveh. We're going to read Megillat Esther. We say a bracha, and then we read the Megillah. That's the general rule. So you put the tefillin on. You put it on your hand. And you're about to tie it, you're about to tighten the tefillin. Before you tighten the tefillin, that's at that moment you say the bracha. Just like we also, before we benefit from food, we also say the bracha before we benefit. Not that we start eating and then we say the bracha. The general rule is, now there might be some exceptions to the rule. One exception to the rule is when you're doing hamotzi, and tilat yadayim for hamotzi. What do we do on a Netilat Yadayim in the morning? We first wash our hands. What's the mitzvah to wash your hands? So let's say we're going to go wash our bread this morning. If we want to have bagels, we're going to have a roll, we're going to have breakfast, so we want to wash. We wash our hands, then we say the bracha, and then we dry the hands. Right? The for hamotzi. The morning also, the Vadia says you should wash before you dry your hands. You should. There are people that he says there are some people that don't do it that way. They just put the bracha name later with the other bracha. But he says, you see, so there's some people, right? There's some people that wash their hands in the morning. They don't say a bracha then. And then when they say all the brachot of the shachar, then they organize it together. But that's what but really the other way to do it is that you wash your hands, and before you dry your hands, you go ahead. Now, of course, if you need the bathroom, You can't say a bracha when you need the bathroom. If you wash your hands, you got up, you wash your hands, and you need the bathroom, you have to wait till you relieve yourself, and then you be able to say the bracha Natilat Yadayim. So let's explain the exception to the rule. A lot of times in life there are exceptions to the rule. The exception here is that when you wash your hands, so let's say for hamotzi, why can't I say a bracha before I wash my hands? Because one reason is my hands might be dirty, right? My hands might be dirty. That's one of the reasons why we wash our hands for bread. There are a couple of reasons that are given, but one reason my hands might be dirty. So for cleanliness purposes, we wash our hands. The rabbis instituted. That's one reason. Therefore, because my hands might be dirty, I cannot say the bracha before I perform the mitzvah. So therefore, what we say is, okay, so therefore wash your hands. Don't dry them yet, because the drying finishes the mitzvah. So wash your hands, say the bracha Natilat Yadayim, and then dry your hands. A lot of people make that mistake. They're going to hamotzi on Shabbat. Everyone washes for Shabbat, right? How many times I've seen people, they wash their hands, they dry their hands, and while they're drying their hands, they're saying that Natilat Yadayim. It's a mistake, because they're supposed to be saying the Natilat Yadayim before they dry their hands. You're really not supposed to. You're not supposed to say, I'll do it while I'm drying my hands. You're really supposed to do it before you dry your hands, because that's the earliest possibility that you could say it. You don't want to say the bracha after you perform the mitzvah. The only difference is sometimes when the mitzvah is still going, then you can still say the bracha. For instance, if a guy put on tefillin, one second, and he forgot to say the bracha on tefillin, or he tied it, and then he started wrapping. I didn't say the bracha. You can say the bracha now. Why? Because the mitzvah is still happening. The mitzvah of tefillin is continuous. Every moment that you're wearing your tefillin, you are getting a what? A mitzvah. You're performing a mitzvah. So then I could still say a bracha on my tefillin even after I started wrapping. But let's say once I finish doing a mitzvah, when the mitzvah is over, it's too late for me to go ahead and say a bracha. Okay? There is a question in halachat, the Natilat Yadayim, if a person dried his hands, he didn't say the bracha before he dried, and he dried it, can he say the bracha Natilat Yadayim after he dried his hands or not? That's a machlok. What do you say?
You can also do it on the Asher Yatzar, because it's different than Natilat Yadayim.
Right, but I'm talking about, let's say Yosef, let's say the Natilat Yadayim for hamotzi. If a person went ahead and he washed his hands, and what do you say?
So you went to the bathroom, you wash your hands, and you can dry your hands and then say the blessing, or you can say the while you're drying your hands,
But the Natilat Yadayim in the morning were more lenient about that.
No, but
many people
through the day.
What do you say?
Asher Yatzar is also through the day.
Yeah, Asher Yatzar is every time, right? But we're talking about the Natilat Yadayim of for bread. Okay, yeah. So that's a machloket. Can you? So I think that's not ideal. Meaning, it's still good. You can still technically say the bracha, but you're still performing the mitzvah, because the mitzvah is happening every minute. So the Aaron is saying, right. But the winding of the tefillin is not so much. The main mitzvah is the tying of the tefillin. So people who go ahead and they tie it, and then while they're winding it, they start saying the bracha. To me, that's a mistake. In my humble opinion. Unless you can find me somebody that says that's appropriate to do it that way, I would say that you should make sure before you tie it. Now, unless you tell me there's some clear, proper minhag by the Sfardim that they have something different, I would doubt it. I would doubt they would delay the recital of the bracha. Well, they don't know. Okay, a lot of that's why people don't know. I like to say there was a businessman, a prominent businessman named Cy Sims. Cy Sims, what was motto on his bags, on his shopping bags, was an educated consumer. Jaime, what did he say? You remember that? I can't hear you.
Educated consumer is my best customer.
Right. He meant to say, what was that point? Because if you were educated about clothing, you would buy here at Sim's department store. So I say the same thing with Torah. An educated consumer, the person who learns Torah, he's the best customer. He's the one who's going to follow the Torah, and he's going to know how to do it right. So that's so let's see if we can find here if he mentions this thing here. If we can find it right away, we also have to wait regarding the tefillin. He said, here, you ready? You're listening to the holy words of the Yalkut Yosef, of Yitzchak Yosef, of Evad Yosef's son, who wrote this, the Yalkut Yosef. You're required to say the bracha on the tefillin of the hand after it's placed on the muscle, right? You have to make sure it's on the muscle of your hand, right? You don't put it on. If people make the mistake, they put it too low. This is not the muscle over here. This is not the muscle. The muscle is over here, a little above 2 fingers. You put on the tefillin on the lower. It's the lower end of your muscle, but it has to be on the muscle. And he says you need to say the bracha before you tie the tefillin, before you make it tight, because all mitzvos are performed before all those brachot are said in general before you do the mitzvah. If a person forgot and did not say the bracha on the tefillin, so then as long as he's wearing the tefillin, he moves the tefillin and he says the bracha. Okay, so that's because it's any mitzvah any mitzvah is continuous, it's still happening. Like he gives examples: wearing a talit, putting on tefillin, sitting in a sukkah. If you didn't say the bracha before you perform the mitzvah, you're allowed to say the bracha afterwards. So Daniel, good, right? Okay, is that clear to everybody? You got it clear? But let's say a guy went to the mikveh, he put the utensils in the mikveh, and then he wants the bracha now. Too late. This is finished. You already dipped the utensils in the mikveh. You can't go in and say a bracha after the mitzvah's gone. What are you saying? Even if the utensils are still wet, you were supposed to do it. You were supposed to do it. When were you supposed to dip the utensils in the? When were you supposed to say the bracha before you dip the utensils? Before you do the mitzvah? What? He got the very good. He got the mitzvah of dipping because now the utensil was dipped, but he lost the bracha. He lost, but it's good. The utensil is dipped and it's ready to go. But right. But what's unique about washing your hands and Tilat Yadayim is you cannot say the bracha before the mitzvah because of some outside source. Then, because of that, as a result of that, we say that maybe even though the mitzvah is completed, maybe you finished drying your hands, there are opinions that say, but since you could not say it beforehand, so maybe we'll allow you to say it after you dried your hands. Therefore, there's opinions that go that way. And other opinion says, no, it's too late. If after you dried it, somebody says too late. You should know there's a big difference in opinion when the wife lights the neirot l'kovod Shabbat. On Friday afternoon, what do the women do? Do the women say the bracha lahadlik ner shel Shabbat and then light the Shabbat candles? Or do the women light the Shabbat candles and then say the bracha? Great question, right? We're not the women, right? But you should know the mitzvah of lighting candles is not just on the wife, it's on the husband too. It's if a wife's away for Shabbat, the husband lights the candles, right? The wife just had a baby and the wife's in the hospital, Mazel Tov Mabruk. So the husband's home, he needs to light the candle, he needs to say the bracha. So how do you perform that mitzvah? So Rabbi, what's the difference? Every mitzvah, you say the bracha before you perform the mitzvah. But here, some people are concerned by saying the bracha, they're accepting the Shabbat. If, according to those opinions that you're saying the bracha, that accept the Shabbat, you can't light, therefore you can't light after you said the bracha. That's the Ashkenaz opinion. The Ashkenaz opinion, if you go to an Ashkenaz home for Shabbat, you'll see the woman, what does she do? She lights the candles. After she lights the candles, she covers her eyes. And then she says the bracha. Like covering the eyes, it's like it wasn't done, and now I'm saying the bracha. Now it's like that's what the women do in Ashkenazim. But as Sfardim, I would speculate there's different customs. What? So you think you do it, but I know that in the Yalkut Yosef, he's very strong. His opinion is that they should, what I recall seeing, they hold that no, say the bracha first. They're not accepting Shabbat by saying the bracha. They say the bracha. They're not accepting the Shabbat, and they won't have. And then they light the candle. So whatever your custom, whatever the woman of the house, she learned from her mother. So whatever the custom is, that's what you follow. That's what she follows. Right, very good. On Chanukah, what do you do by Chanukah? First, you say the brachot, and then you light. People have to be careful. So there's some people, they start saying the bracha, and they're in the middle of saying the bracha, and they're trying to light the menorah. It's right. So the Chanukah, you go ahead and you say the brachot, and after you say the brachot, then you light the menorah. You're right. It's the same, but some will say the same thing for Shabbat candles. But the issue by Shabbat is the concern. Some people have the concern that they feel that the women are accepting the if the women have in mind to accept the Shabbat when they say the bracha, they can't light the candles after they accept the Shabbat. Right? If they say the bracha, the opinion is Ashkenaz opinion. That if you go in and you say the bracha, there's a general rule, you say a bracha before you perform a mitzvah. But if I go ahead and if I accept the Shabbat with the bracha, I can't light. It's already Shabbat. You hear what I'm saying, Nathan? If when I say the bracha, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, she'kiddush sholem mitzvah l'hadik neh shel Shabbat. If I had a mind to accept the Shabbat by saying that bracha, I cannot light. It's already Shabbat. It's forbidden to light on Shabbat. You hear the Ashkenaz issue. Maybe some of the Sfardim are. That's if Hanukkah. Hanukkah is not Shabbat. There's no issue possible. So therefore, Hanukkah, everybody has to be careful to light the Hanukkah. Oh, very good. That there are different opinions on that also. What do you like? What do you do first? Do you light the Hanukkah menorah first, or do you light the Shabbos candles first? So some will say. You know what some will say? Their opinion say you should light the Shabbos. There are some, not the halakha. Some say you should light the Shabbat candles first. Why? Because the mitzvah that you do more regularly comes first. Others say no. You light the Hanukkah because we're concerned if they're going to light the Shabbat candles, they're going to have in mind to accept the Shabbat with the lighting of the candles, and then they can't light the menorah. So that's some of the issues that we have to be cognizant of, okay? And I presume the rabbis instituted the bracha on a mitzvah. It's a meaning the mitzvah minat. Let's say tefillin. The mitzvah minat Torah is to put on tefillin. The chachamim, the rabbis instituted a bracha before you put on your tefillin. And meaning the Torah never said you have to say a bracha before you put on your tefillin. The Torah just says put on tefillin. Torah doesn't say you have to say a bracha before you put a mezuzah on your doorpost. Torah says put on a mezuzah. The Chachamim, most probably the rabbis, actually, Gdola felt that we have to get the people and before you do a mitzvah to put yourself in a certain mindset and focus and recognition. Why am I doing this? Am I doing this? My dad tells me to do it. My dad told me we put up a mezuzah on the door. Okay, I put up a mezuzah. My dad tells me to do it. I do it because we focus in and Hashem commanded us to do this mitzvah. That's why we're doing this mitzvah. It puts us in the mindset. It's like kavanah. It brings a lot of kavanah and focus. I'm doing this for the mitzvah, not for some other hocus pocus protection and At the end of the day, the act itself is the mitzvah, but the blessing is a rabbinic mitzvah to go ahead and say a blessing on a mitzvah. Okay. That's today's Gemara. What Nathan is talking about right now. So now with that, we will go right into the Gemara. The Gemara says we're in Samacham Beis on Article 3, Samacham Beis. We just finished with the Talit, and now we're getting into the Tefillin, which is the order that we do it every day. First, you put on the Talit, and then you put on the what? Tefillin. Now, the question is, why do you put on the Talit and then the Tefillin? The Tefillin is holier than the what? and the talit. The tefillin has all the names of Hashem written in the tefillin. So why do you put? It's a beautiful idea. I want to say hello to Avrami, who has joined as well. What did you say? You covered yourself? Okay, that's a nice idea. Maybe that's a good idea. But why do you put on your talit and then your tefillin? Why not the tefillin and then the talit? Tefillin is holier than the talit. And also tefillin, you're getting 2 mitzvot.
Doing also on Shabbat, but we don't do tefillin on Shabbat.
That's true. That's one reason. It's more frequent. Talit is more frequent. 7 days a week talit, 6 days a week tefillin. So the winner is talit. It's more frequent. Right, you already put a talit katan before in the morning, and so you want to have that in mind as well. But the Shulchan Aruch says a different reason. Shulchan Aruch says the reason ma'alin b'kodesh. Shalom aleichem Shmuley. We have someone on from the Holy Land. So yes, it says that a place of learning is like a mikdash ma'at. It's like a mini Beit HaMikdash. Nathan said we're like in the Holy Land over here. The Shulchan Aruch says a beautiful idea. Morning. Thank you for joining. Make yourself comfortable. Very good. Ma'alin. You look good. You look good. It says ma'alin b'kodesh. We have to go up in holiness. Every day we walk into a synagogue or wherever a person's praying, we need to recognize we need to grow. We need to move up in holiness. So we take one step at a time. So we go with talit, and then that's one level of holiness, and then we take the next level. We go to tefillin, which is holier. Which is symbolic of life is about growing, and you always go, you don't go from a high level of holiness and go down. That's bad news. You're on the way down. Everybody needs to be on the way up in life. And therefore, your ma'alim b'kodesh, you go first from the talit. As great as the talit is, the tefillin is holier. And now we're going to and that's why you should know, on Hanukkah, that's the reason I think the Beit Hillel, one of the reasons the Beit Hillel and Hanukkah, there's a machlok of Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. How do you, we have 8 nights of Hanukkah. Do you do 8, 7, 6? Or do you do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? You go up or you go down in the counting. Beit Hillel says, ma'alin b'kodesh. You got to go up. And therefore, that's why we do 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're doing moving up. So every night of Hanukkah, that message is also supposed to be given to us. Very, very good, very good. Now that we covered a little bit about the talit, now we're getting to the tefillin. Kimonach tefillin adroei. We're now, but before the second wide lines, you see in the page, it's 2 sections of wide lines. It's about 3 lines before the second of the wide lines. Kimonach tefillin. When you put tefillin on your hand, lema, you say Baruch. The bracha is lahaniach tefillin. Now look at the next line of the Gemara. All the fardim here are gonna jump out of their seats. And Reishei, when you put the tefillin on your head, what do you say? Lema Baruch Hashem Kiddushanu Mitzvotav V'Sivanu Al Mitzvah Tefillin. So this sounds very much like the Ashkenazim. The Ashkenazim, as we all know, I don't know if we all, they say a bracha on the hand and they say a bracha on the head. And the language, if you take a little simple reading of the Gemara, that's what simple reading of the Gemara will tell you. It's a separate bracha on the hand, separate bracha on the Rosh. However, Tosfos brings down, and he brings down that Rashi explains that this, when the Gemara says here that you say a bracha on the Shorosh, al mitzvah tefillin, that's if you spoke, if you interrupted between the Shel Yad and the Shorosh. If a person interrupted between the placing of the Shel Yad and the Shorosh, he started talking about the Yankee game or the football game or whatever, the Super Bowl, and he spoke of that between the Shel Yad and the Shorosh. So now he needs to say a bracha. Right, everyone holds that, but I'll tell you where the difference will be. According to the Sfardim, it would seem that according to Rashi's Sfardic opinion, is that if a person would say the bracha on the shel yad and the shel rosh, and they did not interrupt, so they said a bracha that wasn't needed, a bracha she'ein tzricha. You didn't need to say the second bracha. Why? Because the Sfardim say, when you say the bracha on the shel yad, you have to have a mind. I'm having a mind. By the way, the Ashkenazim also interesting, also agree you're supposed to have a mind the shel rosh. Also, we'll explain that in a minute. When you put on the shel yad, you have a mind. I'm putting off of my hand, and this bracha that I'm about to tie my tefillin is going to cover my hand and my head. I need to be thinking. I'm supposed to be thinking about that. And you should know in the 613 mitzvot, the Rambam counts tefillin on the hand as one mitzvah, tefillin on the head as another mitzvah. For person, and they're independent technically of each other. If a person does not have one of the tefillin, he puts on the one that he has, because each one is a separate. Now, others count them as one mitzvah of the 613, but right, right. Where does the Torah mentions? Let's say in the Shema, it says it's mentioned. The Torah says tie the words of Shema on your hand. The Torah says in the Vahayim Shemok, the Torah says, I want these words on your hand. Torah says by the Pasha Kadesh. Why do you start the prayer with Kadesh Likol B'char? Why did we start with Kadesh Likol B'char every day? What? Because those are in the tefillin, and therefore we start with Kadesh Likol B'char, because those are in the tefillin. The 4 pashas found in the tefillin. So they have a mind when you put on the shel yad, you have a mind for my hand, and if you interrupted, then you would have to say a bracha on the shel rosh. If you interrupted between the shel yad and the shel rosh, the Ashkenazim hold you also are supposed to have a mind when you put on the shel yad for my hand and for my head. I'm supposed to have both in mind, but we make a second bracha. It's like a second bracha on the shel rosh. I mean, the shel rosh, in essence, really gets like 2 brachot. The first bracha is for the shel rosh, but the rabbis also wanted to give its own bracha independent for the shel rosh, and therefore we say al mitzvah tefillin. What do you say? Because the kavod rosh, and one of the reasons we've seen from like Tosfos says, because the rosh, we're going to read this. Tosfos says that the rosh is gemar mitzvah, it's the completion of the mitzvah, and it's the main, it's the greater, in a certain sense, it's the greater mitzvah, in a sense, because it has the, instead of having one bayit, see in the shel yad, it's one compartment. In the shel rosh, it's broken into 4 boxes, 4 compartments. That makes it greater. And also you have the shin of Hashem's name engraved into the tefillin, into the box. And because if you have the shin, someone wanted to say something? Because you have the shin engraved, that makes it holy, and therefore there's a special bracha of Mavarach, you say the bracha on the shel rosh. Now, it's interesting that Ashkenazim, after they say a bracha on the shel rosh, you know what they do? They say Baruch Shem Kavod. They say the bracha on the shel rosh. They get it to the right spot. What the Ashkenazim do is interesting. When they put the tefillin on the head, they first place it on the head. Before they place it properly, at that point they say the bracha on mitzvah tefillin. Then they tighten it properly on the head, and then they go ahead and they say Baruch Shem Kavod Machuso L'Olam V'ed. Now the question is, why is that? Right. So if you feel, if the Ashkenazim feel that there's a concern of maybe saying a bracha levatala, so why do it at all? Why say the bracha at all? Now you say the bracha and then you say Baruch Shem Kavod Machuso L'Olam V'ed. Nathan is shaking his head. What's going on? So I want to. So Aruch HaShulchan says beautifully. He says, we are the Ashkenaz opinion. They're confident that you're supposed to say the bracha on the shel rosh. They don't have a question that you need to. They feel with the opinions that like they take the Gemara literally, that you have to say a bracha on the shel yad, on the hand. You have to say a bracha on the shel rosh. But because our brothers, the Sfardim, because there are other opinions that say that you should not say a bracha on the shel rosh, out of respect for them, they say Baruch Shem Kavod Malchus Shalom. How do you like that? Rav Daniel, what do you say to that? That's what we do. That's what Ashkenazim do. Out of respect, meaning it's like people have to realize the fact that we do a certain way doesn't mean that the other guy, there's not other rabbis on the table that have a say here. It's not like, the climate, the political climate today, that they don't recognize another opinion. There's only one way in the political climate today, right? We all know. But we know in Torah, we recognize the fact that Rashi says you don't say a bracha on the Shorosh. Rabbeinu Tam is the one who says you do say a bracha on Shorosh. Doesn't mean that Rashi doesn't exist. So a lot of times also, if a Sephardi does follow sometimes the Ashkenaz halacha, it doesn't mean that, the world's coming to an end. End of the day is the Ashkenazi halacha was based on other great rabbis. It wasn't, maybe it's not, you're accustomed to follow that opinion. You're supposed to follow your opinion, but it's not like you did something that's, you say what you said. Okay, that's a little bit about now if you look at the Tosfot on the right side. The headline of the Tosfot. You have the head of the Tosfot? Nathan, you got it? The Tosfot is right here. The right side, it's bolded. You got it? Yeah, right. Morris, you have the place?
Just open the chickens, please.
What'd you say? We're going to do the Tosfot. So Tosfos first wants to focus in on the text of the blessing. Why is the text lahaniach? Why is it? And then in lahaniach, he says, "Kivan the tchilat hanachata b'zra'o." Since you place it first on your hand, yesh lahaniach levarech lahaniach, because the first thing you do when you're putting on your hand, the first thing is you're putting on your hand. So therefore, they felt it's appropriate to say the bracha. I'm saying the bracha. You commanded us to put on tefillin, and now I'm putting on my tefillin. So I'm putting on my tefillin now. So I say the bracha. The text is laniach tefillin. But when I get to the Shorosh, the Ashkenazim say I'm not going to say laniach tefillin on the Rosh, because. Or if I spoke with someone, if Ashkenaz spoke between the Shayyan and the Shorosh, he's not going to say the bracha of lahaniach tefillin on the Shorosh. What would he say? Al mitzvah tefillin, because you already put it on your hand. Now you're up to your head. The bracha would be al mitzvah tefillin. That's why we Ashkenaz have a switch from lahaniach to al mitzvah. And you should know if the Ashkenaz person spoke between the Shayyan and the Shorosh, he says two brachot on the Shorosh, because you need to, for the Ashkenaz hold, you need two. The brachot is also, the Shayad goes on the Shorosh, plus there's another bracha on the Shorosh. So let's look at the Tosfot. Of the Shorosh, mevarech al mitzvah v'lo laniach. On the Shorosh, you say not laniach shekva his chil v'niach echad mehem. You already put on one of them. If you did not speak, it says if you did not speak, you say one bracha. But if you interrupted, if a person interrupted, you say two brachot. Now, Pirush HaKuntris, so Rashi explains, Rashi says, the mevorich bracha achat al shteihem. Rashi says this Gemara. When the Gemara says if you did not interrupt, Rashi says you say one bracha, that is on both tefillin are covered by one bracha. That's Rashi. 1 second. The mevorach v'lo sach ben asayim. And so Rashi is saying if you did not speak in between, Rashi says you say one bracha. It's exactly what the Sfardim do. Tosfos is not. Tosfos is not happy with that explanation. Well, yeah, because he says, according to there's the only time you say for Sfardim, when will they ever say the bracha al mitzvah tefillin? Only if they interrupted between the Shalyad and the Shalosh. But to say that the rabbis instituted this bracha when a person did a sin, Tosfos refers to it as by interrupting between the Shalyad and the Shalosh, is a sin because you should not have interrupted. So maybe to say that there was a whole institution of a bracha specifically for a situation where a person sinned, that they instituted this new bracha, Tosfos does not buy that. Now, I would like to suggest maybe an answer, perhaps. What? The Tosfos is learning that by interrupting between the Shalyad and the Shalosh, that's called a sin. Someone said hi between the Phil, you're not supposed to respond, have a great day. What I would do is say to you, so you should not respond. But kavod, it's true. But we will not. If someone says hi, what I would say to do, if someone says hi to you when you're putting on your tefillin, you could maybe nod your head. Don't respond. Don't go. Then after you put on your tefillin, go over to them and say good morning. I'm sorry I wasn't able to respond. I understand, but you should be careful. You have to be smart about it. You have to be smart about it how you do it, because you don't want to cause the other guy to interrupt middle of putting on his tefillin. I understand. Yaron is asking a question of kavod ha'adam about what about the honor of the person. I think best thing is to figure out how to do it in a way that you're not going to interrupt to cause a person to speak. Okay, I want to wish everyone a great Shabbat. All the best to everybody. Thank you all for joining. Shmuel Rave, you want to say hello? Rave, I'm sorry I didn't say hello to you. Good to see you.
No, I didn't want to interrupt in the middle. I came a little bit later.
No, you never interrupt. Your smile is back. We always love to see that beautiful smile. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
All the best.
Shabbat shalom.
Well, regards to the Holy Land.
Yeah, it's beautiful here.
Thank you. We should all join you soon.
Shmuel, we need a Chazan this morning. Where are you?
It's not the Chazan from here. It's Shmuel who's the Chazan here. Oh, we need the other Shmuel. We have two Shmuels on the screen. Yeah. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you for joining, Shmuel. Thank you, Shmuel Rave and everybody. Take care.
I put it on from the Yam HaMelech yesterday, but I got cut off.
Oh.
Yesterday I was at the Yam HaMelech. I heard part of your shir and then it froze. Today I'm in Yerushalayim.
Okay, beautiful. We'll all join you soon. Hope Mashiach will come very soon.
Amen. Shabbat shalom. Regards.
Shabbat shalom. You too. All the best.
Hello.
Yeah.
Send my best. Thank you.